Ghrelin is the fat hormone that makes you fat. Leptin is the thin hormone that makes you thin. Leptin is produced by fat cells. So the more fat cells you have, the more leptin you have. And the trick is, the principle here, which we're going to be addressing today, is how can I make myself so sensitive, for those who are overweight, how can I make myself so sensitive to the leptin in my physiology that even the slightest bit of leptin causes my whole system to start burning fat like crazy and gives me lots of energy, and I have no desire to eat anything and like that? And how can those who want to gain weight become more sensitive to the ghrelin in their physiologies, the ghrelin which is produced by the liver, and by the pancreas and the stomach. Pancreas and stomach work together to produce ghrelin. And for those who are overweight, the question is, how can I work with my pancreas and stomach so that they're not overproducing this hormone that makes me tired and crave food and just want to hold on to every single fat cell like that? Attachment to my fat cells, attachments are down there. So let's go in and do some work for the liver and the stomach first. This will help everybody. We're just going to create balance in these areas. So what are we doing? Consciousness, attention is going into those organs. So it's folding in, and consciousness and awareness have the quality of divine being. And they're going to go talk to those organs for a minute. And it's like, I feel like it's sort of like lighting up. The field is lighting up. We're looking at everyone's stomach and pancreas. For a lot of people, there's fear in these organs. It is fear that causes that ghrelin to increase. The pancreas is one of the seats of fear in the body. It's one of the spots where it likes to sit. I'm seeing layers of different kinds of fear, and pretty much all of them have an underlayment of illusion. Some belief, some idea, if I'm pretty, if I'm thin, I'll be pretty or attractive. And if I'm attractive, I don't want to be attractive because I've got a vow of celibacy and I don't want to attract people who might like to be my friend in that way, have a romantic relationship. Or the fear that somehow the fat is protective and I need it for my evolution, for the evolution of my soul. This is one of the points that came up yesterday. We need aesthetic balance for the evolution of our soul. Not at first, not in a lot of the basic constructs. You can hold a job, you can live a life, even if there isn't a lot of beauty or aesthetic value in your life. But when we start getting down to really, really fine nuances of the manifestation process, the blockages to manifestation come from resonations of consciousness which aren't working harmoniously with each other. And as a musician, I tend to think of these relationships of resonances from a musical point of view. But we can also think of it mathematically. We touched on this yesterday. There are relationships between numbers or between shapes. You can say in the body, in the physical body, relationship between, the length of my forearm and the size of my head, or the length of my hand versus the length of my forearm, and so forth. And the whole physiology has actually been formed on the basis of these universal relationships of size and shape and so forth. And you can still have them if there's excess weight on the body, because it's still the body. But it is an illusion to think that you don't need beauty. We all need we all need beauty at some level, because beauty is an expression of ideal proportions and relationships, which at the finer levels of creation, when consciousness is coming from its unmanifest form up to its more manifest level, in order for the consciousness to flow really, really effortlessly, there needs to be a kind of a harmonious coordination or relationship between the way consciousness is vibrating at one level and the way consciousness is vibrating at another level. So this brings us back to our original concept, which is, why is it I know I'm beautiful inside, I know I have a sweetheart, I'm kind to people, I'm giving, I'm loving, but then on the surface I look in the mirror and I don't feel like my body's so beautiful. What's up? What's up with that? So somewhere in there, this is where we're looking at this, clearing this illusion, and I'm seeing it in the etheric body, the mental body, and the emotional body. So we're clearing this illusion, which is underneath the fear that we were clearing before. It is okay to play in the field of beauty. It is okay to allow the feelings that you have toward yourself to be really beautiful. One of the things that happens for people is, especially people who have a little bit of extra weight on their bodies and have that extra strength and fortitude because of that, tend to be so giving to others, and yet not necessarily kind and giving to oneself. My son put it really beautifully. He said that when we look at other people's life story, we tend to look at the highlight reel. And when we look at our own life story, we tend to look at the gag reel. But it's like that. We know ourselves better than anyone. And we know those moments when we felt like we were a disappointment or we made a mistake or whatever. And with other people, we don't tend to see those as much. So always looking at others, it's like, wow, man, they really pulled that together. And, you know, they deserve to be treated well. They deserve my support. They deserve my love. And I've made mistakes and I can see all my gag reel. The gag reel is just as valuable as the highlight reel. The highlight reel means they're moving forward, green lights all the way, moving straight up on their progress and evolution. The gag reel means you're clearing stuff out of your path so that you can have those green lights. And the clearing is great. It is a huge gift. So there, we're coming down to it. We're looking at the gift. We're establishing a habit in the emotional, let's see here, in the emotional, mental, and etheric level of the physiology. When we have those gag reel experiences, looking at the photograph and going, oh no, could it really be? And the truth is, it's not. Photographs lie. That's the truth. Just like they lie for us and tell us that we're bigger than we actually are. They lie when you see them in the media because they've been photoshopped. So it's only there to test, to show you that there was a little spot where you were being a little harder on yourself than you needed to be. Self-love is so important to opening up those channels. Love is so beautiful, right? Love is one of the most beautiful emotions that anyone feels. And that rises up from inside us and we pour it out onto other people all the time. And we withhold it from ourselves. And so this opening this channel through this area, what we're doing is actually moving through time right now. I'm seeing everyone's celestial body is engaging with this process and going through all those, my kids call it the blunder years, where you look back and it's like, oh dear, was I really like that when I was a teenager? Oh dear. So anyway, the blunder years, we look back at all those moments and reestablish them as gifts. I'm seeing at least 3 or 4 big functional values of the celestial body. And by the way, there was a big activation on the celestial body in yesterday's webinar. So we're utilizing the value of that right now because everyone got that as a download. You can see it when you watch the webinar yesterday's. But the celestial body, at least 4 big forms of the celestial body are working through this lifetime for everybody and going back as far as you need to go. Some people are carrying guilt and shame from the past as well. So that's clearing too. And for a lot of people, that guilt and shame is being held. For people that are underweight, guilt and shame is being held here in these organs, this pancreas, stomach. For those who are overweight, it's being held in the fat cells. And this is, in some cases, guilt and shame over something that you did even before you were in this body. So we don't need to hold on to it anymore. All the compassion, the forms, I said 4 big forms. One is pure compassion. I am reading it. There's one that's really, I haven't ever created a word for it. I used to use words like the names of ascended masters and things like that, gods and goddesses and so forth. But the fact is that all those forms of creation, all those non-physical, incredibly powerful, capable, tender, exquisite expressions of consciousness belong to all of us as forms of our own celestial body. And just as a reiteration from some previous, the physical body is very isolated. Its boundaries and limitations are very specified, but the finer levels of your being are much more abstract and discrete, much more expanded. And there's a level, the body, the celestial level, that ranges all the way from the beginning of creation to the end of creation, to the Big Bang, to the collapse at the other end, and goes out into every corner of the universe. So at that level of the self, all these forms, angels, etc., are all contained within your consciousness, within our consciousness. We share them. So in my own physiology, I can feel I'm being a reflector, I'm being your mirror, you're actually doing the work, your God presence running your show over here for each person and organizing so that you're getting the maximum value out of what I'm able to reflect to you, is going back through time. Pure compassion, pure truth, pure forgiveness, and a function that's like pure progress, pure evolution. We have a structure like that. Isn't that cool? It's ever functioning. This was part of yesterday's activation, was that structure of the celestial body holds a kind of a crown in a way, because it is responsible for the constant evolution of the self, and it has taken, it's sort of been liberated or unfettered from the bounds of us not even being aware of it, so that it can move, it can bless and continuously, infinitely now bless the celestial and causal levels of the physiology. And it works. It sits at this junction where it's both celestial and causal. So there's a element of activation or function in that part of the being. Anyway, this is moving back through all the layers of the self, addressing, like whispering, like sitting with you in those moments of the past where you felt that you totally blew it, or you lost, or you weren't good enough, or you somebody indicated to you that you were something less than pure divine perfection, etc. Pure, perfect, infinite being, the expression of the divine, stardust. You were something less than stardust. And what I'm seeing is it looks like for a lot of people, spirit bodies. Okay, so we've got the celestial body functions and the causal body functions. They're working together on you in the past. And all these subtle levels, I'm using a diagram here. This is your dense level. This is your abstract level. And these 4 subtle levels of the physiology are functioning independent of space-time. That's why it's possible to move through time and space from that level of consciousness. And they're affecting the spirit body, which is the This is where a space-time doesn't bind you, but it starts to, the laws and nature of space-time exist at a very subtle level, and it's possible to kind of harness or utilize some of the laws of nature associated with space-time here at the spirit body. So the story of your soul is here from the very beginnings of creation to the end and so forth. And the spirit body, for a lot of people, is undergoing a kind of a catharsis. I can see there's huge amount of discordant feelings are being released from the spirit body. And so many discordant feelings, and so many of us have been members of the same genetic line again and again, because certain structures of the DNA have laws of nature in them, which are supportive of the evolution of an individual soul. Someone will come in as a person, and then that person dies and come in generations later within the same family line with a lot of the same physical characteristics, etc. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that it's also affecting the collective consciousness in the past. It's affecting the field. Having released all this illusion through your own being for so long, for so much of your life, has created a situation where the field is modifying or adjusting. And this has to do with a change that took place in the field, which I also referred to yesterday, but it took place at the live stream last weekend. At least for me it did. For me and anybody who wants to watch that. The matrix of life or creation opened up in such a way that whatever we do in ourselves is automatically reflected out into the relative field of creation. And the ability, this is the very cool part, guys, the ability for the matrix of life to do that is founded on aesthetic relationships within the matrix. When the matrix restructured itself so that all the chords, like the matrix is made of these chords or beams of consciousness that emanate throughout the creation. Inside our bodies, we call them meridians. They're from very, very, very tiny all the way up to huge connecting galaxies together. But this matrix of life that connects everything to everything, there were so many little spots in there where the proportions and relationships of like the sizes of the chords and their distance from each other and so forth. I'm getting a download on that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for our consciousness is bringing forth new knowledge. Oh, yummy. My favorite part. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay, it's a big vision that's coming through right now. Let me just finish that one thought, and then we'll come on to this big vision as appropriate. Anyway, the point is that the matrix opened up. As a result of its opening up and better coherence, better communication from the individual to the collective, then what we do within ourselves has a much more fluid communication to the rest of creation. And this is good, because what this means is if there's something in your environment which is not comfortable for you or is not working nicely, you can go back in on yourself and see where the seed of it is sitting in one's own self-interaction, address it from there, and then it will very spontaneously ripple out into the environment. So we have a way of creating peace. We have, from the level of our individuality, a way of creating peace, a way of creating harmony, a way of creating beauty, a way of expanding affluence and goodness and expansion of all the good things, right? Knowledge, wealth, happiness, relationships, etc. Okay, the download. This has to do with the fact that these beams of consciousness that flow from into from throughout the creation. When I first saw them, I noticed that they a lot of times had curves in them, but I didn't realize until just now that they essentially spiral or slither. They kind of they move like this. I thought they just beamed. I think sometimes they do beam. Don't they sometimes beam straight? Nature always takes the straightest distance, but I'm asking because this is like a lot of new information, so I need to get details so I can really give it to you with words. Doesn't it sometimes go straight? Uh, no, they're always curved. Sometimes, from our perspective, the beams of consciousness appear straight because they're part of such a big curve that, like looking at like the edge of the earth or something, we know the earth is curved, but you don't really notice it. Maybe if you're looking at the ocean, you see it a little bit. And a lot of times those beams are running from one person to another person. And in the case of some really deep, powerful, old, established relationship with somebody, it just seems that, oh, when I think of my sweetheart or my mother or my husband or my children or something, it just goes straight, boom, it's with that person. That's because it's part of this huge O curve of consciousness. This is important because in the field of pure unbounded being, we don't find those beams as such. We don't find them as isolations of consciousness more concentrated in some areas than others. We only find them in the relative field of the physiology. And we know that everything that manifests kind of spirals forward from the absolute out to the relative. And everything that needs to contract back into the field of pure knowledge comes in the same way. It comes down like this into the field of knowledge. And that these waves, these spiral-like waves, are constantly spinning around themselves all the time. And it is through the system of expansion and contraction of waves of consciousness that manifestation occurs.